The mist clings to the overgrown path leading to what remains of the Del Valle estate in rural Virginia. Thick vines embrace crumbling stone walls, nature reclaiming what was once a symbol of wealth and prominence. Local residents avoid this place, crossing themselves when the name Del Valle is mentioned. This channel is not for everyone, especially those faint of heart. In the county archives, recently unsealed documents tell a story so disturbing that historians questioned their authenticity until forensic analysis confirmed the yellowed pages dated back to the 1870s. The journals of Chicago journalist Isabella Rossi, discovered in 2018 within a hidden compartment of her great-granddaughter's inherited desk, provide the first comprehensive account of what many consider the most terrifying case of ritualistic fatal crimes in American history. The year was 1874 when Isabella Rossi first heard whispers of the Del Valle family. America was still recovering from the Civil War, rebuilding both infrastructure and social bonds torn apart by conflict. In this atmosphere of attempted normalcy, the Del Valle family maintained a peculiar isolation on their sprawling estate in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. What state are you listening from? Perhaps you can imagine the dense forests and winding roads that effectively cut off the family's 200-acre property from neighboring communities. According to census records from 1870, the estate housed Alejandro del Valle, the family patriarch, his son Victor, and 12 servants. The Del Valle family had emigrated from Spain in the 1830s, bringing considerable wealth and establishing themselves as peculiar but generous landowners who rarely ventured into town. Isabella Rossi arrived in the nearby village of Millfield in November 1874, following rumors of strange occurrences at the Del Valle estate. Her journal entry from November 8th reads, "The townspeople speak in hushed tones when I inquire about the Del Valle family. Mrs. Winters at the boarding house warned me not to pursue this story, saying only that 7 young women have left this world after associating with Victor Del Valle." When I pressed for details, she closed the shutters though it was midday and suggested I return to Chicago while I still could. The Del Valle family had established a respected position despite their reclusiveness. Alejandro Del Valle had funded the construction of the town's only school and made regular donations to local churches. His son Victor, described in contemporary accounts as tall, refined, and educated in Europe, was considered the most eligible bachelor in the county, despite being in his early 40s and having been widowed not once, but 7 times. Before we continue with this disturbing tale, it should be noted that county records verified Victor Del Valle had indeed been legally married 7 times between 1861 and 1874, with each marriage ending within hours of the ceremony. The Del Valle estate featured a private chapel, approved by church authorities in 1842 and consecrated for family use. This chapel, according to architectural plans preserved in the county records, connected to the main house via an underground passage. The family employed Father Thomas Sullivan, a young priest from Boston, to serve as their private chaplain. In his letters to his sister, found in the Boston Diocesan Archives, Sullivan initially described his position as most fortunate, with generous compensation and elegant accommodations. His tone changed drastically after 8 months at the estate. His final letter, dated October 1874, states only, "Something is terribly wrong here. The passages beneath the chapel, the sounds at night. I fear for my soul and for any woman who enters this place. If this reaches you, pray for me." Father Sullivan passed from this life 1 week after writing this letter. The official cause was listed as brain fever, though no medical examination was recorded. Victor Del Valle personally delivered the news to town, along with a generous donation to the church in Sullivan's memory. A new chaplain, Father Gregory Martin, arrived at the estate within days. What happened next would forever change the peaceful village of Millfield. Amelia Foster, daughter of the town's blacksmith, became engaged to Victor Del Valle in December 1874. She would be his 8th bride. Town records show that Robert Foster, Amelia's father, received a payment of $1,200 just prior to announcing his daughter's engagement, an enormous sum equivalent to several years' wages for a tradesman. The wedding was scheduled for December 21st, the winter solstice. Isabella Rossi's investigation took a darker turn when she befriended Harriet Wilson, a servant who had recently left employment at the Del Valle estate. According to Rossi's journal, Wilson provided disturbing details about the previous brides. Each one was beautiful and young, no older than 20, Wilson told Rossi. Each wore the same wedding dress, passed down as a family tradition according to Mr. Victor. And each left this world before the wedding feast could begin. Wilson described how the family claimed each bride suffered a sudden illness at the altar, collapsing moments after saying their vows. The doctor was always present at the ceremonies, ready to attend, but none could be saved, Wilson recounted. Mr. Victor mourned extravagantly for precisely 1 month before beginning to seek another bride. The village doctor, James Harrison, refused to speak with Rossi directly, but his medical ledger, subpoenaed years later during the investigation, showed identical notations for each bride. Sudden failure of respiration and heartbeat. No external signs of injury. Possible heart defect or nervous shock. No autopsies were performed, as the Del Valle family insisted on immediate burial in the family cemetery on their property. As dawn broke over the settlement on December 20th, the day before Amelia Foster's wedding, Isabella Rossi made a decision that would save the young woman's life and expose generations of darkness. Disguised as a delivery person bringing final arrangements for the ceremony, Rossi gained access to the estate. While the household was occupied with wedding preparations, she discovered a hidden entrance to passages beneath the chapel, just as Father Sullivan had mentioned in his final letter. What Rossi found in those damp underground chambers defies explanation even today. Her journal describes a circular room beneath the altar, its walls covered in ancient Spanish text and disturbing symbols. At the center stood a stone table with 7 shallow depressions, each containing a small crystal vial of dark liquid. Nearby, a leather-bound book contained entries dating back to 1632 in Spain, all written in the same meticulous hand despite spanning more than 200 years. Rossi, educated and fluent in Spanish, translated portions of the text before being discovered. Her journal records, the pact requires 7 brides sacrificed upon consecrated ground, their final breath captured at the moment of union. When the 8th bride completes the circle on the longest night, he who made the bargain shall receive renewed life for another century. Alongside this passage were detailed instructions for a ritual to be performed as the bride spoke her vows, involving a specially formulated substance applied to the inside of the wedding ring. Meanwhile, in the village, leave a comment with your theory about what was truly happening at the Del Valle estate. Had 7 young women been deliberately led to their final moments as part of a centuries-old pact? The evidence Rossi uncovered suggested something even more terrifying. Baptismal records hidden within the family Bible showed that Alejandro del Valle had been born in 1632, the same year the first entry appeared in the ritual book. Portraits throughout the house, labeled as ancestors, showed the same man in different clothing across centuries. Rossi was discovered by Victor del Valle while examining these documents. Her journal ends abruptly on December 20th, but what happened next is documented in town records and newspaper accounts from Richmond and Washington. Rossi managed to escape the estate with key documents and reached the town marshal, showing evidence of the ritual planned for Amelia Foster. Though initially skeptical, Marshal William Clark agreed to accompany Rossi back to the estate with 3 deputies. They arrived during the wedding ceremony. Contemporary accounts from guests described the chaos that ensued as Marshal Clark interrupted the vows. According to the Richmond Daily Dispatch, dated December 23, 1874, a most peculiar disturbance occurred at the Del Valle estate when local law enforcement interrupted the wedding ceremony of Victor del Valle and Miss Foster. Accusations of a most serious and unbelievable nature were made. When authorities attempted to examine the ring about to be placed on the bride's finger, the elder del Valle became violent and was restrained. Subsequent examination of the ring revealed a sharp interior mechanism containing an unknown substance. Analysis conducted by a chemist from Washington confirmed the presence of a fast-acting compound derived from tropical plants not native to North America. When pricked by the mechanism inside the ring, the substance would enter the bloodstream and cause immediate respiratory failure with few visible symptoms, matching the descriptions of how each bride had passed from this life. The investigation that followed revealed the full scope of the Del Valle family's dark history. Excavation of the family cemetery found the remains of not just the 7 Virginia brides, but 23 women in total, buried in a circular pattern around a central unmarked grave. Each still wore her wedding ring, each ring containing the same deadly mechanism. Foreign objects were discovered in the chest cavity of each victim, later identified as crystal vials similar to those Rossi had found in the underground chamber. What terrified investigators most was the state of the central grave. When opened, it contained no remains, despite records indicating it belonged to Alejandro del Valle, supposedly laid to rest in 1854. The grave contained only an empty coffin lined with soil from multiple regions, identified by a botanist as originating from Spain, Portugal, and various South American locations. The trial of Victor and Alejandro del Valle became the most sensational case in Virginia history. Newspaper accounts describe how Victor maintained his innocence throughout, claiming no knowledge of the ring's modifications. Alejandro, however, refused to speak at all, staring silently at the proceedings. Courtroom observers noted his unusual appearance, with one journalist writing, "Though recorded as being in his 70s, the elder Del Valle appears no more than 50, with a vitality that unnerves all who meet his gaze." This channel isn't for everyone, particularly those who dismiss historical accounts of the supernatural. The most disturbing evidence presented at trial was a journal kept by the real Victor Del Valle, found hidden in the walls of his bedroom. The entries revealed that Victor had passed from this life in 1860 during a trip to Spain with his father. The final entry read, "Father has introduced me to a man he calls his mentor. They speak in an ancient dialect when they think I cannot hear. Tonight we perform what Father calls a transference ceremony that will ensure our family legacy continues. After this date, all journal entries were written in different handwriting, though still signed as Victor. The implications were too disturbing for many jurors to accept. What state of mind must a person be in to claim another's identity in life?" The jury found both men guilty on all counts in April 1875. The judge, noting the exceptional nature of the crimes, sentenced them to death. Contemporary accounts describe a peculiar occurrence on the morning of the scheduled execution. Guards found Alejandro del Valle in his cell, appearing to have aged decades overnight. A physician summoned to examine him described him as a man of over 200 years, with the most severe physical deterioration I have ever witnessed. He passed from this life before the execution could be carried out. Victor, or the man claiming to be Victor, was executed as scheduled. His final words, recorded by the prison chaplain, were, "The cycle is broken, but the knowledge remains. Others will complete what we began." The Del Valle estate was seized by the county and remained abandoned due to local superstitions. A fire in 1890 destroyed most of the main house, though the chapel remarkably survived. In 1923, a historical society attempted to renovate the chapel but abandoned the project when 3 workers experienced identical nightmares and refused to continue. What state are you listening from? Would you dare visit the remains of the Del Valle estate, which still stands today, though the exact location has been deliberately omitted from tourist maps? Local residents maintain a code of silence about directions to the ruins, believing that those who truly seek the site are drawn there by forces they cannot understand. Isabella Rossi published her complete investigation in the Chicago Tribune in a series that ran for 6 weeks in early 1875. The story attracted national attention but was eventually dismissed by many as sensationalist journalism. Rossi maintained the truth of her account until her final days and continued investigating similar cases throughout the country. Her private papers, only recently discovered, suggest she found evidence of at least 4 other families across America with histories similar to the Del Valles. The most disturbing postscript to this account came in 1975, when a historian researching the case discovered a marriage certificate in Madrid, Spain, dated November 1875, just months after the execution in Virginia. The groom's name was listed as Alejandro del Valle. Attached to the certificate was a small note, the handwriting matching that of the man who had claimed to be Victor. It read simply, "The 8th bride awaits." The cycle continues. Before we continue with other disturbing tales from America's hidden history, leave a comment with your theory about the true nature of the Del Valle family. Were they practitioners of forgotten magic, or merely skilled poisoners exploiting superstition for wealth? The baptismal records that showed an impossible lifespan have since vanished from evidence storage, leaving us with questions that may never find answers.